Anyone that won't allow you to try it for free, run away.
And that guy on Facebook telling people you can use spreadsheets, he's wrong.
Hey, it's Brett Chittum with Lawrence Technology Services, Lawrence Systems, and I'm here with
Jason Slagle, CNWR.
Hey, how's it going, Jason?
It's going. It's been a week, but I'm excited to talk about this this thing here because I have opinions, and it'll be interesting to see how your opinions vary from my opinions on this.
I don't know, we've lined up pretty closely with a lot of things, but this is business technicalities, and yes, we're talking about CRMs and really, what is a CRM? Do you really need it? Is it something that's going to work for you? And how probably to choose the best one for you, right? I mean, think about that. I mean, there's a lot of things that I like one, you might like another, and actually we're using the same one, so we both
we
like
are.
it. But anyways, when you think about, a CRM and stuff, what are some of your thoughts?
So CRM to me is a spot where you can centralize, essentially managed, essentially customer data, right? So like this
The customer
is
relationship management tool is what it is.
I mean, that's what it stands for, right? But so more succinctly or more directly, right? This is where I keep track of open deals and other
Mhm.
information I have on the customers. And I mean, there's, I think, essentially two categories where this happens, right? We've got customers that are basically top of funnel customers or
Yep.
customers that we haven't yet done business with. And then customers we have an existing relationship with. And that distinction is actually pretty important. And as we talk through this, you'll find that while we are using the same one, in one area we are not using the same one, and that is once a customer is a new customer. And I'd like to change that, but it's going to take some work to get there.
So so we both use you. Should we say what we're using?
I think we can.
We
I mean,
both
just
use HubSpot, right?
we do.
And I think you're working on it right now with yours because you've been in it. You've seen how
Yep.
it flows, and you're trying to build it to flow with your process. And that's what we try to do as well. Because for one, if you're looking for a CRM, it needs to be able to be built for your sales process. And there's lots of them out there, and
Yeah.
there's free ones. There's ones you pay a little for, there's ones you pay a lot for, but you have to figure out which one's going to match your needs. I will tell you, with us and our CRM, it keeps me organized, right? The basic um analogy, so prior to us using a CRM tool, we started having our leads funnel into our ticketing system, and we
Mm-hmm.
realized very quickly that that was going to be a mistake because things get lost.
Yeah.
But prior to that, our contact form on the website went to a Google form, and it would fill out, and we'd have to go through and see, okay, who's new on the list, and look at that. What using HubSpot did was it put everything into one place. We have
Yeah.
it integrated with our Slack. We have it integrated with our calendar. We have it integrated with our email system so that everything works and flows together. So I can go and find something in one place when I'm dealing with a client, and that happens a lot, right? I get calendar appointments all the time on
Yep.
my in my appointment book, and I just go to HubSpot, search that person's name. Now I know what we're going to be talking about.
Yeah, it's I mean, we're starting down this road of some content marketing stuff.
Hmm.
And one of the big things that I want out of a CRM right now is the ability to figure out what content of ours a customer or a lead is
Hmm.
consumed, right? So like the sales guy can understand by the time they have a conversation with the client, they can understand some of the things the client is curious about and has been reading about, right? To
Right.
not to go into the conversation a little less blind.
Well, that's
Yeah.
important, right?
Yep.
It takes some in sales. Anything to get an advantage in sales, you have to understand where that client is coming from, right? So you
Yeah.
create content. So Tom creates content on something, and it's almost, we can almost put it on a timeline that is true and accurate every time. He does a video, the next day we start getting a few drop-ins. By the third day, we're getting a ton of questions on it, needing consulting on it. So,
Yep.
when it comes to firewalls, when it comes to switches and APs and cameras and stuff, and so it's nice to know and see the tracking of that, hey, Tom did a video
Yeah.
on XCP&G. Now we start getting consulting calls on XCP&G. Tom did a
Yeah.
video on this. You know what I mean? It's the content is important and to know where it came from.
It would be so. Unfortunately, I don't think YouTube allows you to get the type of analytics you would need to drop
Mhm.
that in spot. So you can't really tell if a lead is watched the YouTube videos. I guess you could embed them in the site, but that's not how people tend to consume that sort of thing. I mean, it's very important to understand that type of thing. And I don't consider it necessarily an unfair advantage, right? Like
Mhm.
it's you, Tom, and I have a very similar philosophy, and that philosophy is be as free as possible with information. Like I'll tell you how to
Mhm.
do something, right? Like, and if you're not comfortable doing it and you need help, then you'll pay me to do it, right? Like, but I
Right.
shouldn't necessarily gate the knowledge, right? I was on a call with a client the other day that is one that Tom and I have been working on together, right?
Mhm.
And there was a bunch of mechanical changes that needed to be made to the environment. So I showed him how to do it. And I'm like, here's how you do this. Click, 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 click. Here's the
Right.
steps. Do you want to do the rest of them or do you want me to do them? Like, you're paying me. This is your time. And the guy's like, no, I'd rather you do them. I'm like, okay. Like
Of course.
I mean, I totally get that. Like, from I know how to fix it if I misclick something standpoint.
Mhm.
And I think that a lot of sales, and we're kind of drifting off topic a little bit here.
Right.
I think a lot of sales companies and even company leaders think that if they give their secret sauce away, and they're willing to tell people that it costs them sales, and in the end, maybe to a certain extent it does, but for every one of those that
Yeah.
you lose, there's one that you're going to gain to the transparency and just the trust you build by doing the right thing.
Right. No, that's a good talk. We ought to actually talk about that topic and get
Yeah.
Tom on here and have a talk because he's been doing that for years. Um, but your CRM can help you in managing
Yeah.
when I'm trying to think of a lead in on getting back into CRM, but as your leads come in and you're talking about doing content and giving free advice away and giving the sauce away for free. Um, you can track that way. And yeah, YouTube doesn't have the good algorithm with how that comes in, but with HubSpot, you can actually track or any CRM, you can track it and go into okay, here's the leads that are coming in this way. You can start to get demographics of why, not demographics. What's the word I'm thinking of? Um,
Uh,
oh, I can't think of it. But you can start getting those metrics of
yep.
where people are coming from, and so it's
So
I don't know. I
I
don't know
actually
how
just sent you a
somebody
link. You
does it.
can hook it. You can hook HubSpot to YouTube apparently.
Oh,
So
we'll have to work. That's
yeah,
our next work. Well, because I mean, you think about it, HubSpot actually links to a lot of things.
it
We've
does.
talked a lot about HubSpot, and we're not telling you that that's the one you should use. I mean, by all means, you should try things out. There
Yeah.
are a number of them out there, but we
Yes.
have found it works for the way we flow in our workflows.
Yeah.
Uh,
So why do we want this, right? Like, let's go back
yeah,
to the high level thing here of we've kind of gone down the road of telling people what we use, but we haven't told people necessarily why they even want a CRM.
right.
We kind of touched on it, right? Like, so for me, there are three things that I'm after, right? I want a
Okay.
centralized source of data. And again, I kind of alluded to the fact that we're kind of split brain right now. Once a sale is closed and it's an active existing customer, we tend to use managed as a CRM
Hmm.
for a variety of
Right.
reasons. And I'd like to eventually start using HubSpot for all of it. Uh,
Right.
but I want some amount of automation, right? It's like I want to be able to nurture and drip to a customer, right?
Hmm.
Like, build the rapport, share information, have a newsletter, things that are without some sort of system. I mean, you can do it with just a mailing list thing, but it's, having that tied into your CRM so that when they come in, you can see that they've been reading your emails, or you can see what
Right.
emails they're reading, right, is very big. And then collaboration. And, I alluded to, I think our last week's video that my sales guy and the company have parted ways, and having all of that information tracked and centrally located, so any member of my sales team, or to a certain extent even some of us that aren't on the sales team like myself, can go in and see what touch points and what pain points a customer has talked about and other
Hmm.
things that have happened, right? Even if a sales guy's out on vacation and the customer calls in, right, having the ability to see what the customer and the other salesperson talked about makes that a lot more seamless for both sides of the
Right.
conversation. And it's a better experience for all. So that's why we need a CRM.
Right. I think the collaboration part and the documentation part is all important in that, right?
Yep.
You got to hopefully if you choose to use a CRM, you're going to make good use of it and document and put notes in there and discuss, when you're having those client discussions, you're filling out the information. And you talked about drip campaigns. Why would you use something else when a CRM can do that for you in the
Mhm.
automation that it
Yeah.
creates? So if you're thinking about, should I have a CRM? Yes, you should, because it makes your job easier. It creates
Yeah.
accountability for your
Yep.
sales team. It really helps to build a trust, because when somebody calls you, they don't have to reiterate their issue again,
Yep.
right? It's there in front of you. What's happened? You could even ask questions like, "Hey, when we talked last, I noticed, you had a problem with this. How's that going now?" Because
Yep.
that starts to keep that relationship going, and it's right in front of you in one pane of glass.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I mean, this is one of those things that, like, our trip most necessary, this, that, the other thing, right? Like, sales is easy if you catch the guy on the right or the girl on the right day, right? If you catch them
Right.
when they're having a bad time, then the sales process is ridiculously simple. But that happens very, very, very infrequently, right?
Right.
So the idea of nurturing, right, and the idea of all this stuff is, customers probably has a relationship with an existing provider, right? At this point, I
Hmm.
assume that 90+% of businesses out there are doing something for IT. Maybe it's an
Right.
office manager running it. Maybe it's another IT company. Maybe it's break fix. Maybe they're fully managed. I assume at this point you're doing something.
Right.
Sometimes that's not the case, but generally it is. And until you have some reason to change, inertia is very strong, right? Like, you're
Hmm.
not like the hurdle that a sales guy has to overcome is huge there.
Right.
And until there is some sort of triggering event. And so what you want in the entire purpose of this and the entire purpose of the CRM and all this other stuff is, you know, maybe you have a conversation and you end up calling, and maybe you meet them at an event. You come back, you put your notes in, right? Like,
Hmm.
you ask at the event, you ask the conversation, you ask what I feel is a very important question that we could also dig into. Like, tell me about some problems that you have that aren't being solved correctly, or just
Hmm.
tell me some pain points, or if I could change one thing about how technology works in your business, what it would be, right? Capture the
I would,
results of that.
yeah. I asked the question. Here's the question I asked. And I make it simple. What sucks with your current
Yeah,
idea?
yeah. I mean, that's, there's so much value to be gained in what sucks, because, it's somewhat disarming, right? Like, they're not maybe going to spill the details of it, right? And, in the end, I can't necessarily, if I can give some tidbits, if I'm having that conversation with somebody at a bar, at like a
Mhm.
chamber or something, right? Like, I'll give some tips, like, oh, maybe try this, maybe try this, maybe try this. And there's
Right.
no selling in that, right? It's like, this is just conversation. And then what happens though is, when they have a bad day, you've nurtured that, they call you, and then the ability to ask them about that thing you talked about 6 months ago,
Hmm.
man, it's like, oh, this guy remembers me. And my memory is pretty good, but it's not that good. So having the data in
Right.
front of me to be able to do that, that's really, really powerful.
It helps for recall memory, doesn't it?
Yep.
There's so many reasons why a CRM is an important tool in your business, especially in the IT business, any
Mhm.
business for that matter, but the IT business specifically, because you can put so much inside there, not passwords or anything like that, but you can put so much information about jobs you've done with them in the
Mhm.
past, um, issues they've had in the past, so that you can help to, when they call, like I said before, and like you said, you're bringing that information up, making sure things are still working well. It just helps to build that relationship. And that's why it's a relationship management tool, right?
Yep.
It is truly. And it makes a salesperson's job easier. It makes the administration easier within a company, because it's all in there. Like you don't have your one sales guy anymore, but you're able to go in and, where did he
Mhm.
leave off?
Yep.
And where was he at on these different projects? And you can almost seamlessly jump in and take those over. Because let's face it, employees don't always stick around for 30 years, right? They
Mhm.
come and go, and having that information and having even a new person coming in, what a great tool to be able to put in front of a new person so that they can start to understand that client right away.
So let's move on, I think, to the next part of this,
Okay.
because I know you have a hard stop coming up here, and I think we could
Yeah.
talk about this literally until the heat death of the universe. So
Right.
we'll move on here. So I think hopefully we've convinced you that you need some sort of CRM for your business.
Hmm.
So let's talk about like the two general categories of CRMs here, and I think they fall into these two categories: the ones inside of your PSA,
Hmm.
right, and then standalone third-party products. And I'm gonna assume that based on our target audience and demographic, that most people know PSA is professional services automation. It's the auto task, BMS, I think is Kaseya's, MSP
Hmm.
manager, I believe is enables, and manage is ConnectWise. Did I say manage already? I don't think I
Yeah,
did.
yeah, you may have.
Whatever. Right. So there are others, right? I think Synchro has one. I think
Hmm.
Repair Shopper is Synchro's potential. I don't know.
There are
There's
a
a
ton of
ton of them out
PSAs
there.
out there. Yep.
And for a smaller organization, that may be sufficient, right? Like
Hmm.
I alluded to earlier that once a customer is signed, uh, to a certain extent, manage becomes a source of truth, right? Because I use
Right.
Sell or CPQ, whatever it's called today. I use Sell, and all my quotes end up there. My opportunities, once you're an existing client. As a matter of fact, as
Hmm.
soon as I get to the point of quoting you, you're in Manage, and all my quotes and stuff are in Manage. We
Right.
stop using HubSpot at that point, which sucks, and I want to change it. But it all the data based on the fact that it is your customer relationship, like it does that, right? All your
Hmm.
service tickets, all the projects you've worked, all that stuff is already inside of your PSA, right?
Right.
So I make the
If you're
argument,
using one.
and I don't know, do you guys don't, right?
No, we started testing them, but with things coming up on the horizon, we've put a
Yep.
stop at that for a moment. So,
I mean, if you have a PSA, right, like you to a certain size and to a certain extent, you could probably get away with it.
hmm.
It's already in the product you're paying for, right? Largely, right, and it can
Right.
do a good enough job. Where I find they fall short, right, is the email tracking is really
Hmm.
clunky, right? Like it sucks. You can do it in Manage, you could do it in Autotask, but it's a fairly manual process and it's not awesome. The authors of that software would tell you to utilize tickets or
Hmm.
activities so that all that stuff's tracked. But then you get the fact that ConnectWise has since moved to Salesforce's
Hmm.
CRM. And you can see that at some point or another that probably stopped scaling. Uh,
Yeah.
but if you're a
Yeah.
small shop, right? If you have one or two salespeople and you're not working tons of deals and you're not making cold calls and you're not doing other things, and maybe you're not really doing a newsletter. Even if you are doing a newsletter, ConnectWise has, I think, Campaign Manager. It's not a ton of money. It's like $50 or $75 a month, and it
Hmm.
lets you do some of that stuff, right? And maybe it's good enough, right? Like again, like it's included in the price.
Right. Well, I think that I personally like that, we use our HubSpot for the sales part,
Mm-hmm.
and then everything moves into the rest of our systems once that
Yep.
goes through. But what continues to happen is communication between the
Mm-hmm.
client and I, as long as you've integrated it within your email service, right? And there's an integrate it still tracks. Every email I send out is tracked through HubSpot. Every email entered, that's sent to me is tracked. And I think that's important because it allows you to see a timeline of events that are
Yep.
coming, because we have a client right now that we've had an interesting onboarding of a certain service, and it's been really interesting. But you know what, I can actually go through HubSpot and see the trail of
Yep.
what's transpired, all the tickets opened, all the support tickets for that other the other company that's helping us with this. And it's all in one pane of glass.
Mhm.
If But I like that standalone. So you tend to maybe want it all in one, or
I want it all on HubSpot. I just haven't
yeah.
gotten there yet.
Well, can HubSpot quote? I mean, there's the other
It
thing too as
can't.
well.
I'm going to use other tools and services to basically try to hook the things together.
Mm-hmm.
I know Sell can talk to Salesforce. It does not. I think it's roadmap to talk directly to HubSpot, but it does not at this point.
It'll
So
get
I'm
there.
looking to use third parties. So let's segue right like into the
Yeah.
second group of these, which is standalone.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So obviously we've spent a ton of time talking about HubSpot and how much we like
Right.
it. What other options are out there?
You got Salesforce. So I mean, if you're looking for a
The,
robust system,
the
I
million
mean,
pound gorilla.
yeah, and I mean, there is so much. I've used that at other companies, and there is so much that can be done with Salesforce. Um,
Yeah,
I
I did
don't
a lot
know.
of Apex programming at my last job to
Yeah,
support the sales team using Salesforce to integrate it to the rest of our systems. It
I
is
mean,
ridiculously powerful.
it is, and it's actually got some tools in there that will help when you click on something on an email you sent. It'll
Mhm.
send you a certain way based on what you click. There's a lot within the marketing
You can do
part.
some of that inside of HubSpot too, as long as you're
Yes,
on
you
a
can.
professional plan.
Yeah, yes, you can.
uh,
But what are some of the other ones you've worked with?
uh, Active Campaign.
Yep.
I know that one seems to be pretty popular in the vendor space.
Hmm.
I noticed a lot of the vendors seem to use it. I think it's cheaper than HubSpot, and if your deal is largely you need to maintain an email list and keep track
Hmm.
of some leads and do some light CRM work, I think its pricing is very compelling, and so
Yep.
I think it could work, especially if you plan to use your PSA once a customer
Hmm.
signs, right? It
Right.
could be very well be the case that you can use something like Active Campaign with it and
Hmm.
just put them together as best as you can.
That might be an
I
interesting one to look at.
Yeah, I think Tom will drive down here, beat me with a baseball bat if I don't mention at least one open source option here. So
He won't. I promise you. He's not
uh,
violent.
I'll mention Sugar CRM,
Yep.
which is open source CRM. I've used it in the past. We've set it up for a couple customers. It works fine, right? Like it's a little more do it yourself. They
Hmm.
obviously have a paid version of it too. But I mean, it can do a lot of the things that the bigger pieces do. It doesn't do
Hmm.
them as well as those other ones. I would argue that HubSpot and Salesforce are better, but they come with
Right.
better pricing, and better pricing is not better for you; it's better for them. Uh, right, and there are a ton of options. I had one I used at one point or another that like bolted on
You
top
told
of
me, and I
Joomla.
wrote it. I can't find that note. I wrote it down. We talked about
Yeah.
it before the show.
Uh, Yeah, I used one that bolted on top of Joom CRM for a
Yeah.
while. Don't do that. Friends don't let friends run Joomla, honestly. But I mean, it worked. We used it at the last company, and I've used a stack of them. The
Hmm.
ISP I worked at back in 2004, 2005. I was using one of the open source CRMs, and it works.
Hmm.
Not Sugar. It was one of the others, and it works well for what you're trying to do, right? So there are tons of options out there depending on your level of comfort. If you're good at open source stuff, Sugar is a very, very good,
Yeah.
free, cheap alternative to other things.
Well, I mean, you think you just Google CRM, and
Yep.
you're gonna find a number of things. I'm just looking at them now. It's there. It's gonna be. I think let's segue that finally into where we're at with looking at the factors of
Yeah.
how do
Why
you
you might choose one over the other?
right. I
Price.
mean, that's a big one.
Yeah.
So I always laugh though because price isn't the biggest factor in any decision a customer makes. 9% of that is price.
Yeah, that
Okay.
is 100% true, and you have to consider the total cost of ownership. I mean, I pay
Hmm.
HubSpot. God, it's like $1,500-$1,600 a month because I have
Right.
Sales Pro and Marketing Pro. Uh, it it's more expensive than my PSA at this point,
Hmm.
uh, but the features I get out of it, especially once I get it fully implemented the way I want to, I think it'll make it worth it, right? And my
Right.
total cost of ownership, right? Like really, if it's the difference between me closing one deal and not closing it, it mostly pays for itself.
Right. Oh, absolutely. Because it's really going to take just a couple deals that you were able to just stronghold
Mhm.
that relationship through that CRM and the things you were able to do with it. I mean,
Mhm.
you have the marketing pro, right? You have the ability to send out, emails and help build marketing
Yep.
campaigns through that. It's an incredible There are incredible tools built in the CRM that automate, and I believe automate the crap out of everything you
Yeah.
can, right? Especially sales. Important features, so price and features. Do the features of a CRM meet your needs? Because you need to be able to look at and go, okay, right now our process is this. Okay, we
Mhm.
this is how we the life cycle of a client, right? Um, does this CRM meet that life cycle, or does it show us a better life cycle that might work better? I mean, there's because let's face it, the only consistent thing in life is change, right? And
Yeah.
if it even helps you in changing and maybe fine tuning a process as well, because I've done numerous sales processes, and
Yep.
I know you have too, and you've been a part, and you've changed yours over the years, and we
We
have
have.
as well. Um, does that CRM's features match that?
Yeah. And
Also, does it? Go ahead.
if
I'm
you're
talking a lot.
small, like you can get away with the starter package of something like
Hmm.
HubSpot, right? Which is only going to cost you like 45, $50 a month. It only includes two
Yeah.
sales users, right? Like, and not quite as many features, but I mean, it's a good way. It's the way, it's like the drug dealer that gives you like the free taste, right?
Hmm.
Like, because once you're in, they hook you. So keep that in mind, but it is cheap to get started.
Right. Well, I used HubSpot in my consulting business when I do in business consulting, and gosh, for the true free version, it worked well for me. And I'm not saying that to do just the free version. There's a more robust HubSpot out there
Yeah.
if you're willing to pay for it, like what you're paying $1,500 a month. But what's your return on investment, right?
Mhm.
Is that ROI making it? And absolutely, you can say, I think unequivocally, it is making it.
Yep. I
So.
agree with.
So I think the gist of it is, yes, you need a CRM. How to choose the best is going to be truly up to you, but I think you need to take these things for test
Yeah.
drives. And
Yep.
and anyone that won't allow you to try it for free, run away.
Yeah. And that guy on Facebook running around telling people you can use spreadsheets, he's wrong.
We tried it. Like I said in the beginning, we tried it, and I will tell
Yeah.
you that was
It's so terrible. Such bad
that was
advice.
yes. You can't. You can use
Eh.
spreadsheets, but we
If
don't
you
suggest it.
if you don't value your time, right? Like that's
Mhm.
another topic that we should definitely dig into is like
Mhm.
the hidden cost of not investing in tools.
Right.
I'm a tools guy, but I'm not like I'm an ROI driven tools guy.
Mhm.
You 100% can do all of these processes on a spreadsheet or in a Rolodex. People did it in a
Yeah.
Rolodex for years, right? Like, however, if you look at the increase of productivity of the human race over the past 40, 50 years, it is largely driven by adoption of technology. So
Yeah.
you can definitely do it. I do not recommend it if you want to be as productive as your peers.
Well, that's the thing too, is 50 years ago there were less businesses, less companies biting for that
Yep.
business, right? I mean, now, I mean, how many people are doing the same thing we do and you do, Jason?
Mhm.
How many?
A
Yeah.
lot.
So
Yeah.
all of you out there listening to this, that's you. We're fighting for your business and you're fighting for our business, right? How are you going to be able to um, rise to the top, become that cream of the crop, right? It's by automation and using tools that are going to help you get there.
Yep. And I think that's a good segue out of this.
Out of this, we're out of it. Hey, yeah, we only went 28 minutes this time. Actually,
Yep.
29 once we say goodbye. Um, Jason, thank you. I get excited about these talks, even though I delayed you a little bit this morning. So,
Whatever. I normally I'm the delayer, so you get this one.
all right, good,
I'm
good,
sure
good.
I'll
All
make
right.
up for it.
Hey, everybody, like and subscribe. We should have said that in the beginning. We actually didn't talk about a book today, so I'm a little surprised and impressed by that. Um, but
I have
oh
lots
no,
of books on this
yeah,
topic, but we don't need to.
we don't need to. No
We're
books.
exiting.
We're exiting, and hey, make it a great day, guys.
Yep. You have a great day. See you next week.